Welcome back, everyone. Before we dive in, be sure to drop your thoughts, feelings, and lessons in the comments below. Like the video and subscribe so you never miss stories like this. Let's get into it. The cruelest thing my wife, Nyla Wickham, ever said about me wasn't in an argument or behind closed doors. It was said at her mother's dining table in Aurora, Colorado, with her family watching me like I was a wallet with legs. She lifted her glass, smiled like she was proud of herself, and told them, "If he's hurt, that's his problem. I'm here for what I'm owed." Nobody corrected her. Nobody flinched. Her mother nodded like Nyla had finally said something wise. I sat there with a tight chest and a tired body, realizing my pain had become background noise. Here's how it happened. My name is Zaire Whitcomb, and for years I believed stability was love in action. Not speeches, not grand gestures, just the quiet discipline of paying bills on time, showing up, and keeping promises even when life felt heavy. Nyla and I met in Denver at a co-worker's birthday dinner, and she carried herself like she had been disappointed before, but still expected good things. I liked that confidence. I thought it meant she could build with me. I did not realize it could also mean she felt entitled to whatever I created. We moved fast in a way that looked responsible from the outside, shared a small place in Green Valley Ranch, merged routines, talked about savings like it was a love language. Nyla said she wanted a partner who could lead, someone dependable who would not embarrass her with instability. I took that seriously. I worked overtime, stayed out of trouble, and built my life around predictability. When we got married, I believed I was choosing a teammate. I did not notice how often she spoke about my potential like it was already hers to spend. The first warning sign came wrapped in compliments. Nyla would talk about my work ethic in front of people, then immediately pivot to what it meant she deserved. "Zaire is a provider," she'd say, smoothing her hair. "So I don't have to stress about the little things." The little things were never little. A quick run to the store became bags of decor. A small upgrade became new furniture financed in my name. If I hesitated, she'd look at me like I was failing an invisible test. I told myself marriage meant compromise. Her family entered our marriage like it had an open invitation. Her mother, Laverne Kitt, treated my living room like a waiting area for her opinions. Her uncle, Marcel Kitt, spoke to me with that polite disrespect that never raises its voice but still leaves bruises. Nyla's cousin, Rashawn Kitt, always had a new idea that required money and a signature. They would come over for dinner and somehow leave with my time, my resources, and my patience. Nyla never defended me. She would just say, "That's family," as if family was allowed to be careless with my life. I try to set boundaries like an adult. Simple ones. No big lending without discussion. No surprise bills. No new people moving in. The moment I said it out loud, Nyla's face hardened. She wasn't loud, but she was absolute. "You're not going to start acting controlling," she told me, as if protecting our finances was a personality flaw. Then she called her mother and repeated my words with a twist, turning my concern into an accusation. Within a day, I was the villain in a story I did not write. Work was already pressuring me when the health scare started. I was in a logistics role that demanded long hours, and the holiday surge hit like a tidal wave. I woke up early, came home late, and told myself it was temporary. One afternoon in Centennial, I felt that tightness in my chest again, sharp enough to make me stop at a parking lot and breathe through it. I sat there gripping the steering wheel, staring at nothing, trying to convince my body it was safe. I finally went home and told Nyla I needed to slow down for a week just to reset. Nyla looked at me like I had asked her to give something up. "So what does that mean for the bills?" she asked first. "Not, are you okay?" Not, "Should we go to a doctor?" Just the bills. I told her I had enough savings to cover everything if we were careful. She gave a small laugh, the kind that means she doesn't respect what you just said. "Careful," she repeated like it was a joke. Then she started listing things she had planned. A family trip, a new sofa, her cousin's business idea. She said it all like it was already approved. That dinner in Aurora happened 2 nights later. Nyla insisted we go because her mother missed us. I should have recognized the setup when I saw how formal the table looked. Extra chairs, food spread out like a performance, everyone waiting. Nyla's family talked about money the way some people talk about weather. They asked what I made, how my credit looked, and whether my job had good benefits. When I tried to keep it vague, Nyla answered for me. She was proud of my numbers in the same way someone is proud of a purchase. Halfway through the meal, I mentioned my chest tightness again and said I wanted to schedule an appointment. I tried to keep my tone calm, not dramatic. Laverne waved her hand like she was brushing away smoke. Men your age are always tired, she said. Marcel chuckled and asked if I was stressed about keeping up. Nyla didn't correct them. She smirked, lifted her glass, and delivered that line. If he's hurt, that's his problem. I'm here for what I'm owed. She said it without warmth, like she meant it as policy. I looked around the table, hoping someone would register how cruel it was. Nobody did. Rashawn nodded like he agreed, then asked about a loan again. Laverne smiled like her daughter had finally learned how to handle a man. I sat there swallowing humiliation with every bite of food. It was a new kind of loneliness, being surrounded by people who felt entitled to you. When Nyla reached for my hand afterward, it wasn't comfortable. It was ownership, like she was reminding me who was expected to pay for the night. The ride home was silent until we hit I-225. I told Nyla I didn't like how she spoke about me. She did not apologize. She didn't even pretend. You're too sensitive, she said, eyes forward. You want to be respected? Then act like a man who can handle pressure. That phrase, act like a man, landed like a slap. I asked what handling pressure had to do with basic kindness. She laughed again, short and sharp. Kindness doesn't pay rent, she replied. And that was when I realized we weren't arguing. She was informing me. Over the next week, Nyla's family started calling more. Her mother texted lists of needs. Her uncle asked what date I could transfer money. Her cousin sent links to investment opportunities. The more I slowed down at work, the more they pressed. It was like they could sense I was tired and wanted to collect before I woke up. Nyla treated their requests like obligations. If I said no, she'd go quiet and cold. If I asked questions, she'd accuse me of trying to embarrass her. My home stopped feeling like rest. It felt like a payroll office. The first time Nyla threatened to put me out, it sounded like a joke. We were in our apartment in Centennial, and I told her I wasn't comfortable giving Rashawn money again. Nyla leaned against the counter, arms crossed, and said, if you want to act broke, you can act broke somewhere else. I stared at her, waiting for the punchline. There wasn't one. She looked at my face like she wanted to see me panic. That night, I slept lightly, listening for every sound, like I was living next to someone unpredictable. I finally went to a clinic in Lakewood after another episode in a grocery store. The doctor told me stress can mimic serious symptoms, but that I needed tests and rest. I sat in my car afterward, hands shaking, not from fear of dying, but from the strange grief of knowing my wife would treat it like an inconvenience. I called Nyla and told her what the doctor said. She sighed loudly into the phone. So are you still going to work tomorrow? She asked. That's when something in me started to close. Not anger, just the door. Nyla's solution to my health was to increase my pressure. She planned a family meeting in our apartment, inviting her mother, uncle, and cousin. She didn't ask. She informed me. When they arrived, they sat in my living room like a panel of judges. Laverne talked about the sacrifices Nyla had made being married to a man who thinks feelings matter. Marcel said a husband's job is to provide, not complain. Rashawn tossed a folder onto the coffee table with a business plan and said, we just need your signature. Nyla watched, satisfied, like she was finally putting me in my place. I tried to stay calm and factual. I said I was willing to support my household, but not fund grown adults who treated me like an ATM. Nyla's eyes narrowed. So you're denying my family? She asked, raising her voice for the first time. Laverne gasped dramatically. Marcel smiled like he had been waiting for the conflict. Rashawn leaned back and said, man, she told us you were getting difficult. Nyla didn't deny it. She confirmed it with a look. Then she pointed at the door and said, if you can't do what's right, you don't need to be here. I did not leave that night. I stayed because it was my home too, and because I was still stuck in the old belief that marriage is reparable if you work hard enough. Nyla punished me for staying by changing the emotional temperature of everything. She moved through the apartment like I was furniture. She stopped cooking. She stopped speaking unless it was about money. At night, she would turn her phone away and smile at messages that had nothing to do with me. I asked once who she was texting. She said, "Someone who doesn't make me feel guilty for wanting more." One morning I came home from work to find my closet half emptied. Not my clothes, hers. Suitcases by the door, my towels moved, my toothbrush missing. Nyla was sitting on the couch, scrolling her phone, calm as ever. "My family is coming to stay for a while," she said, like she was announcing a weather report. I told her that wasn't agreed on and violated the lease. She shrugged. "It's handled," she said. Then she added, "And don't start with that lease talk. We both know whose money keeps this place running." Her certainty would have been impressive if it wasn't cruel. That evening, Laverne arrived with bags and attitude. Marcel came behind her with a rolled-up air mattress like he owned the space. Rashawn followed, already asking where the spare key was. I watched strangers rearrange my living room and realized my wife had invited an occupation. I told Nyla this was not happening. Nyla leaned close and whispered, "You can't stop it. You're too soft." Then she smiled at her mother and said loudly, "Make yourself comfortable." I stood there with my heart pounding, not from health this time, but from betrayal. The next day, I got a call from the leasing office asking if we had added occupants. My stomach dropped. I told them no, and that I hadn't signed anything. They said they had received an email request from Nyla asking about adding residents. I asked them to forward it to me. When I opened it, I saw Nyla had tried to present herself as the primary leaseholder. She used language that implied I was an authorized payer rather than the actual signer. My name was on the lease. My signature was the one on file. Nyla was counting on my exhaustion to keep me from noticing. I confronted her carefully with the email open on my phone. Nyla didn't deny it. "I did what I had to do," she said. "My family needs stability." I told her I was her family too. Nyla's expression didn't change. "You're my husband," she said. "So yes, you're part of my stability." That's when I heard how she defined love. Not care, not partnership, utility. I told her this was a fraud. She waved her hand. "Stop being dramatic," she said. "You're not going to do anything." Her confidence came from a version of me she had trained. That night, after everyone went to sleep, I sat in my car outside the building in Centennial and stared at my steering wheel. My chest felt tight again, but the pain was different. It was grief. I thought about the man I had been, steady, loyal, proud of providing. I thought about how I'd let people disrespect me because I confused patience with strength. In the quiet, I realized I had two choices: keep living as a resource or become a person again. I didn't need a big plan. I needed a first step, so I made one call. The next morning, I opened a new bank account at a different branch in Littleton during my lunch break. I didn't do it out of revenge. I did it out of survival. I asked the banker to help me remove overdraft links and set up alerts Nyla could not access. Then I called my payroll department and redirected my direct deposit to the new account. My hands shook while I spoke, not because it was complicated, but because it felt like breaking a spell. For years, my money had been the leash that kept me in place. I was unclipping it quietly. I didn't cut everything instantly. I studied. I pulled statements and traced where money was going. I saw charges I didn't recognize: subscriptions, transfers, cash withdrawals. I saw payments to Rashawn labeled as consulting. I saw Nyla sending money to her mother with notes like rent help, even though Laverne didn't live with us until now. Every line item told the same story. My income had become community property in their minds, not because of law, but because of entitlement. I downloaded everything and stored it in a folder labeled with a neutral name, Utilities Archive. The same week, Nyla escalated. She started openly discussing my finances with her family in my presence, as if I was invisible. Laverne would say things like, "He better not think he can stop providing now," and Nyla would answer, "He won't. He knows what happens if he tries." She said it with a smirk that made my stomach turn. One night, I went into the kitchen and heard her on speakerphone telling her mother, "If he's hurt, that's his problem. I'm here for what I'm owed." She repeated it like a motto. I quietly hit record on my phone. When I listened back, my throat tightened. There was her voice, her certainty, the laughter of her family. It wasn't a threat. It was a declaration that my suffering meant nothing. I didn't feel satisfaction collecting evidence. I felt sorrow that I needed it. But I kept recording when she put calls on speakerphones and when she held family meetings in my living room. I also started emailing myself summaries after each incident. Dates, times, who was present, what was said. I didn't embellish. I kept it clean, like I was writing a report for someone who did not know me. Nyla's next move was the one that finally forced the exit. I came home from work and found my key not working. I tried again. Still nothing. I knocked, and Rashawn opened the door like a guard. Nyla stood behind him, arms crossed, completely calm. "You're not staying here tonight," she said. I asked what she was doing. She said, "I'm protecting my peace." I told her she couldn't lock me out of my own home. Nyla shrugged. "Then call somebody," she said. Laverne laughed from the couch. No remorse. Not a trace. I stood in the hallway with my work bag, feeling my face burn with humiliation. Neighbors opened doors slightly, curious. Nyla didn't care. She was performing control, and she wanted witnesses. I walked to my car and sat there shaking, not because I didn't know what to do, but because I couldn't believe she would do it so easily. I called the non-emergency line and asked what my options were. They told me it was a civil issue and suggested contacting the leasing office and seeking legal advice. Nyla had been counting on that helpless gap, where cruelty hides behind procedure. That night, I slept in my car in a grocery store parking lot in Parker, wrapped in a jacket, trying not to think about how marriage had turned into exile. I was exhausted, and the exhaustion made everything feel unreal. I kept seeing Nyla's face, how casual she was about removing me from my own life. At around 3 a.m., my chest tightened again. I forced myself to breathe slowly until it eased. Then I whispered into the dark, "I'm not dying for this." It wasn't dramatic. It was a promise. I woke up at dawn and went straight to the leasing office. The property manager listened while I explained that I had been locked out and that unauthorized occupants had moved in. I showed my lease, my ID, and the payment history. The manager's expression changed when she saw my name as the primary signer. She told me they could not legally change locks without the leaseholder's authorization and asked for documentation. I showed text from Nyla saying I was not staying here tonight. The manager took notes and said they would issue a notice about unauthorized occupants. I asked what my next steps were if I wanted to remove myself from liability. She recommended I speak to an attorney. I didn't have a personal attorney. I found one through a referral list and booked a consultation in Denver. The lawyer was a calm black woman named Kedra Sloan, and she didn't flinch when I described the situation. She asked for documents, timelines, and proof of lockout. I opened my folder and showed her the statements, the lease, the recordings, the emails, and my written summaries. Kedra nodded slowly. "You've been preparing," she said. I told her I had been surviving. She explained my options: formal notice, financial separation, and legal action to protect my credit and rights. Kedra also said something that hit me hard. Forcing you out doesn't make you less responsible unless you document it. Nyla had tried to set a trap where I would still pay while being excluded. Kedra helped me draft a written notice to Nyla and the property manager stating that I had been unlawfully locked out, that unauthorized occupants were not permitted, and that any attempt to add residents without my signature was invalid. It wasn't an emotional letter. It was clean, firm, and factual. For the first time in weeks, I felt my breathing deepen. Paperwork was a language Nyla couldn't charm her way around. I still needed somewhere to sleep. I got a small short-term rental in Lakewood. Nothing fancy, just a quiet place with a clean bed and a door that locked for me, not against me. That first night, I sat on the edge of the mattress, fully dressed, afraid to relax. My nervous system had been living on alert. I showered and watched water run down the drain, thinking about how much I had tolerated. Then I opened my laptop and continued organizing evidence. It wasn't an obsession. It was reclaiming reality. Nyla had been rewriting the story for too long. I needed the truth preserved. Nyla reacted exactly the way a person reacts when they lose control, not with remorse, but with anger. She called my phone dozens of times the next day. When I didn't answer, she left voicemails accusing me of abandonment, selfishness, and betrayal. She said I was punishing her family. She did not ask if I was okay. She did not apologize for locking me out. She demanded money. "We have needs," she said. "You can't just disappear." The audacity should have been funny, but it was too sharp. She truly believed my role was to provide whether I was present or not. Laverne sent texts too, long ones full of moral language. She wrote about vows and duty. She said a real man would not embarrass his wife. She also slipped in threats, hinting that Nyla could take everything if she wanted. I forwarded every message to Kedra. Marcel left a voicemail telling me to fix this before it gets ugly. I saved it. Rashawn sent a cash request with a note. "We are still moving forward." I stared at it and felt something settle inside me. Clarity. This wasn't family. It was a coordinated extraction. It didn't miss me. They missed access. The property manager posted a formal notice about unauthorized occupants. Nyla called me screaming, saying I was trying to make her look bad. I didn't argue. I kept my responses short and written. "Please communicate through my attorney," I texted. That message enraged her more than any insult would have, because it meant she couldn't twist a conversation in real time. Nyla liked verbal intimidation because it left no trace. Written boundaries are harder to manipulate. She replied, "You think you're smarter than me?" I didn't respond. I didn't need to be smarter. I needed to be consistent. Kedra filed the appropriate paperwork to separate my financial responsibilities and protect me from debts Nyla might create in the meantime. We also documented the lockout as part of a pattern of coercion and financial exploitation. I learned how many adults walk around thinking emotional cruelty has no consequences because nobody ever made it procedural. Nyla kept trying to talk me into coming home, but every invitation was really a demand to resume paying with no conditions. "Just come back and stop acting like a victim," she said in one message. No remorse, just contempt for my pain. The court date came faster than I expected because Nyla rushed to file first. She wanted the advantage of being the one who asked. She claimed I abandoned the marriage and cut her off. She asked for temporary support, insisting she had become accustomed to my income. When I read her filing, my hands shook with anger, not because she lied, but because she did it so confidently. Nyla's entire strategy was built on my silence and shame. She assumed I would not want the public discomfort of court. She didn't understand that she had already put me on display in that hallway. The court was just another room. In the courthouse in Denver, Nyla arrived dressed like she was attending a celebration. Laverne sat behind her with a tight, satisfied smile. Marcel leaned back with his arms crossed, scanning me like he wanted me to flinch. Rashawn sat 2 rows behind them, scrolling his phone like none of it mattered. Nyla didn't look nervous. She looked entitled. When she saw me with Kedra beside me, her eyes narrowed. She whispered something to her mother, and Laverne smirked. They were still performing superiorly. They didn't understand that preparation looks quiet, and quiet can be lethal in a legal setting. The judge asked questions in a steady voice. Nyla spoke first, describing herself as wronged. She said I suddenly changed, that I became cold, that I refused to support her family in a crisis. She made it sound like charity instead of exploitation. She claimed I was unstable and emotionally unwell, subtly referencing my health episodes as evidence that I couldn't be trusted. Hearing her weaponize my chest tightness made my stomach drop. It was evil in a clean blouse. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her confidence came from believing she could rewrite reality without consequence. Then Kedra spoke. She didn't attack Nyla. She presented documents. Lease records showing I was the primary signer. Payment history proving rent came from my account. Emails from the leasing office regarding unauthorized occupants. Text messages documenting the lockout. Bank statements showing unusual transfers and requests tied to Nyla's relatives. And finally, Kedra asked permission to play a short audio clip. Nyla's face shifted slightly, a flicker of irritation. The judge allowed it. The room got quiet in a way that felt heavy. My throat tightened. I stared straight ahead. Then Nyla's voice filled the courtroom. "If he's hurt, that's his problem. I'm here for what I'm owed." It played clear as day, followed by laughter and agreement. The judge's expression didn't become dramatic. It became sharper, like the lens on a camera focusing. Nyla stared forward, jaw tight. Laverne's smile disappeared for the first time. Kedra didn't comment on the audio emotionally. She simply said, "This reflects the respondent's mindset regarding the petitioner's well-being and the financial demands being placed on him, including during a documented health issue." The judge asked Nyla if that was her voice. Nyla said yes, without shame. "I said what I said," she replied. The judge asked follow-up questions about the lockout. Nyla tried to frame it as space. The judge asked if she changed the locks. Nyla said she handled it for peace. The judge asked if I was on the lease. Nyla said yes, but claimed I didn't act like it. The judge asked if she attempted to add occupants. Nyla said she was trying to help family. The judge asked if I agreed. Nyla said I was being difficult. Each answer made her look less like a victim and more like a person who believed rules were optional when she wanted something. The ruling came quietly, but it landed hard. The judge denied Nyla's request for temporary support in the way she wanted it, citing the documented lockout, financial irregularities, and the unauthorized occupant issue. The judge also warned Nyla against misrepresenting lease authority and reminded her that forcing a spouse out while demanding full financial maintenance does not read as good faith. Nyla's face stayed cold. No remorse, not even embarrassment, just anger that the machine she relied on, my silence, had stopped working. Laverne leaned toward her and whispered something. Nyla didn't nod. She just stared at me like I had stolen something. Outside the courtroom, Nyla walked past me without a word, shoulders stiff. Laverne glared at Kedra and said, "You're proud of yourself?" Kedra didn't respond. Marcel muttered, "This isn't over." Rashawn laughed under his breath and said, "You'll be back." They needed me to come back to restore their narrative. They needed me to be ashamed. I felt something unfamiliar as I walked out of the courthouse into the cold air. Space. Not joy. Space. The kind you can finally breathe inside. I drove back to Lakewood and sat in silence, letting my body understand that the ground under me was mine again. The months after court weren't cinematic. They were quiet and hard, which is how real change happens. I still felt lonely. I still woke up some nights with my heart racing, reliving the lockout and the laughter at that dinner table. I went to therapy, not because I wanted to talk endlessly, but because I needed to stop confusing endurance with love. I also went back to the doctor and completed the tests. Stress was the main culprit, but the warning was real. Keep living like this, and my body would eventually quit on me. I promised myself I would not let entitlement bury me. I focused on practical stability. I kept my spending simple, cooked at home, and rebuilt my savings. I started running in the mornings along a trail near Sloan's Lake, slow at first, just enough to remind my body it could move without fear. I stopped checking Nyla's social media. I stopped asking mutual acquaintances for updates. I didn't need her story. I needed my own. My therapist helped me name what I had lived through: coercion, exploitation, emotional abandonment. Hearing those words applied to me felt strange, like they belonged to someone else. But naming it made it real. And real things can be handled. Nyla never softened. She sent messages occasionally, always with the same tone, demanding, blaming, insulting. If I didn't respond, she escalated. If I did respond, she twisted it. Eventually, I followed Kedra's advice and kept all communication through legal channels. Nyla told people I was stingy. She told people I had mental issues. She told people I left her for no reason. She did not mention the lockout. She did not mention the recordings. She did not mention her family living in my home while I slept in a car. That's how people like Nyla survive, by narrating around the truth. The karma didn't need to be dramatic because the consequences were built into her choices. The leasing office continued enforcement, and the unauthorized occupant issue escalated into fees and warnings. Nyla tried to blame me, but the lease record didn't care about blame. Her family, once cozy in my living room, became a liability. When the apartment complex required compliance, Nyla's mother and uncle did not suddenly become responsible adults. They complained. They argued. They refused the rules. Eventually, their presence became unsustainable. Nyla called me furious, saying I ruined everything. I didn't respond. I hadn't ruined it. I had just stopped hiding it. A few weeks later, I received an email from the leasing office because my name was still associated with the unit. Kedra handled it, ensuring my liability was formally removed. In the email thread, I saw Nyla's attempts to dispute charges and claim confusion. She wrote politely to management, acting cooperative, but the timeline contradicted her. The lock changed, the unauthorized occupants, the notices, everything was dated. The manager's responses were professional and firm. Nyla could not charm paper. She could not intimidate a system that required signatures. Watching it unfold from a distance felt strange, like observing a storm through a window. I didn't celebrate. I just felt relieved I wasn't inside it anymore. My private transformation started to show in small ways. I stopped flinching when my phone buzzed. I stopped apologizing for setting boundaries. I took a certification course at night, project management, something that could move me into a higher role. I studied in my small Lakewood kitchen with a cup of tea, the apartment quiet, my mind focused. It wasn't glamorous. It was discipline. The same discipline I had used to provide for Nyla, now redirected toward myself. When I passed the exam, I didn't post it anywhere. I didn't tell people who didn't earn access. I simply updated my resume and applied. The job offer came from a company in Golden, with better pay and a calmer schedule. When the recruiter called, I sat on my couch and listened carefully, making sure I heard the numbers correctly. I accepted quietly. No announcement. No revenge speech. I just felt my shoulders drop, like my body recognized safety. The first paycheck hit my new account, and I stared at the balance longer than I needed to. Not because I was obsessed with money, but because money had been used against me for so long. Now it meant options. It meant freedom. It meant I could take care of my health without someone treating it like weakness. Nyla found out eventually, not because I told her, but because she tried to use an old contact at my workplace to pressure me and learned I had moved on. She called me angry, demanding to know where I work now. I didn't answer. She sent a message. You think you can just upgrade your life and leave me with nothing? I stared at the screen and felt something surprising calm. Nyla still thought my progress belonged to her. She still thought my purpose was to fund her comfort. She had not changed, and that was its own punishment. A person who never reflects is trapped in the same room forever. The final legal resolution came in the way most real endings do. Paperwork, timelines, and signatures. The divorce process moved forward with documented evidence and clear financial separation. Nyla fought not for reconciliation, but for advantage. She wanted the court to order what she couldn't demand directly. But the documented pattern didn't support her narrative. In mediation, she refused to acknowledge harm. She insisted she was owed for her time. When asked about locking me out, she said he could have slept anywhere. No remorse, no shame, just entitlement wearing a neat outfit. The mediator's patience thinned. Facts have a way of exhausting performance. Nyla's karma hit suddenly in a realistic way. Not with dramatic screaming, but with financial consequences and isolation. Her family, once loud and confident in my living room, scattered when there was no money to anchor them. People who live off access don't stay when the access ends. Laverne moved on to another relative's home. Marcel stopped calling. Rashawn stopped sending cash requests. Nyla was left holding the responsibilities she had avoided for years. Rent, bills, consequences, and a reality that control doesn't pay. She tried to blame me publicly, but blame doesn't write checks. And nobody was rushing to owe her what she claimed. I heard about her final fallout through a quiet source. An automated notice that her attempt to dispute certain apartment charges had been denied, and the account was sent to collections under her information, not mine. Kedra confirmed I was protected. That was the moment I felt the deepest exhale. Not because I wanted Nyla to suffer, but because suffering was no longer mine to carry for her. I had been her safety net, her excuse, her escape from accountability. When I stepped away, gravity returned. And gravity is fair in a way people aren't. The real victory was what happened inside me. My chest tightness reduced. My sleep stabilized. My appetite returned. I stopped jumping when someone raised their voice. I learned the difference between being kind and being available for exploitation. I started rebuilding friendships I had neglected because Nyla demanded my attention. I spent weekends hiking near Morrison, sitting in the quiet, listening to wind move through trees, letting my mind slow down. It wasn't a glamorous life. It was a peaceful one. And peace, I realized, is expensive because it costs you the courage to disappoint people who benefit from your suffering. One evening, months later, I drove past our old apartment complex in Centennial on my way to a grocery store. I didn't plan to. The route just happened. I looked at the building and felt nothing dramatic. No rage, no longing, just recognition of who I used to be. The man who thought love meant tolerating disrespect. I parked at the store, bought what I needed, and went back to my Lakewood place where nobody demanded I prove my worth. I cooked dinner, cleaned up, and studied for a new training at work. The quiet felt like a reward I had earned the hard way. Nyla never apologized, and I stopped needing her to. Some people can't admit harm because their entire identity depends on being justified. But I didn't need closure from her mouth. I had closure in my bank alerts, my locked doors that opened for me, my steady heartbeat, and the simple fact that I could wake up without dread. Nyla told her family, if he's hurt, that's his problem. She was right about one thing. My healing was my problem, so I handled it, quietly, completely, and without ever giving her access to the life she tried to collect like debt. If you made it to the end, you just watched a quiet comeback done the right way. Subscribe for more real, grounded karma stories, and comment receipts if you want the next one even more intense. The end.